Okay, first would be the bylaws. These are the bylaws that were updated today. It was the last few grammatical type situation. You'll notice the date is April 22nd. Just says April 21st. Oh well. Our council says because we did such extensive changes, I can present this, the committee can present this in full as a first reading, and we will vote on it at the next meeting. It'll be open for discussion, and there will be a vote next meeting. Does anyone have any questions right now? Yes? No? Seeing none? Madam Chair, we'll table this till next month for a second reading. Yes?
And give everyone a chance to read it, right?
Yep.
Are you gonna go over this at all now, or any other
I
changes?
wasn't going to.
Okay.
Also, I will be providing a PDF electronic copy for the stenographer who will attach it as an appendix to the meeting minutes transcript. So it'll be there for review as well. And it, just like right on top. And once it has been approved, then it will be posted, they will be posted on the Remo website. Again, any questions? No? No? Go home, read them. We'll vote next month. Okay, number 2, membership. We have 2 seats that are currently vacant. We received a resignation from Ashley Edwards of Saratoga County. It'll be up to Saratoga County to appoint her replacement, and then an alternate, because she had moved up from alternate to a member, and they hadn't replaced the alternate. So Tim will be reaching out to them for that. We also received a letter from Zori, where's Nancy? Pinheiro? Am I saying that right? Close enough. Zori says she has too much going on, so she wished to resign her position as an at-large member. Before I even knew about this, because I wasn't at last month's meeting, I had received an email from Dean Romano, which has Tim to please make copies and give to everyone, his cover letter and his resume. He's again expressing his interest in the available at-large seat. I'll give you a few moments to review through that, if you would please.
Just a question.
Yes, sir.
From past practice, and not a reflection in any way against Dean, but I mean, do we typically acknowledge the vacancy and replace the vacancy simultaneously, or?
It's been done several different ways in my 12 years here. We received Zori's resignation 3 weeks ago. It was right after the meeting. So this happens to be the first meeting upon which I could report back.
No, I just meant in terms of, and I quite frankly
In the
don't
past,
remember, so that's why I'm asking the question.
We have
How
not.
do we typically seek candidates, or is this simply what we do?
Well, in the past, it has been that folks have come to us. At-large seats don't become open very often. So there isn't a real precedence for it. I would remind you all, and I did double check with our council, that until the bylaws are voted in, we must approach this request for membership under the bylaws that are in place.
Would it be better to wait for the bylaws to be in place to?
Well, the council said that that would have to be a decision by the group, but that it would be inappropriate at this time and could be seen as, not being fair. Yes, sir.
I think based on this specific individual that has applied, that I think the membership committee might want to defer any action tonight and meet with the executive director to discuss the situation and perhaps the officers. This is not without controversy. I mean, I just would say that this individual was employed here for a long time. The employment did not end well. It just ended recently, and before,
But he did resign as
I-
opposed to be,
I understand that.
well, the council
So,
made sure I made the distinction between the
yes,
two.
I know, but I think that it would be worthy of allowing the executive director and the membership committee to review the specific circumstances before advancing it.
And this is the first meeting that the vacancies have been made public, correct? So no other candidates have been able to apply, right?
I also agree, I agree with that as well. We're under no obligation to fill it
No.
right away, and we have a new set of processes to put together.
No, we're not. I just was told to make it clear.
I would recommend we wait.
We need a motion, so make
I
it,
make a motion that we wait until the bylaws have been.
I'll second.
All in favor?
aye.
Okay, so wait until next bylaws are approved.
I have nothing else to report, Madam Chair.
So we can move on to the annual audit report.
Okay. I'm Katie Doran with Teal Becker and Shermonte CPAs, presenting the annual audit report. I understand that you have a very full agenda, so I'm going to go quickly. However, that does not mean that I will not answer questions. I tend to speak very quickly also, and so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I don't want you to feel as though I'm rushing through and not giving you an opportunity to ask questions. So feel free to stop me at any time, ask any questions, I'll answer them as best I can. What you have in front of you are 2 letters and a bound financial statement. So I'm going to go through these quickly, and I'm going to go through them in the order of the longer letter with the staple in it first, and then the bound financial statements, and then the very short letter. And there's a reason behind that. The longer letter is required communications. Our auditing standards require us to communicate with those charged with governance, either a separate audit committee or you as the entire board, certain items whenever we do an audit. So this first among the items that we're required to communicate is our responsibility in relation to the financial statement audit. Our responsibility is to form and express an opinion on whether the financial statements that have been prepared by management with your oversight, you are responsible for oversight, are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Because you have an audit, because you've hired us as auditors, our audit does not relieve you or management of your respective responsibilities. Our responsibility is to plan, perform our audit to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. We consider internal control over financial reporting as a basis for designing our audit procedures and are appropriate in the circumstances, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the organization's internal control. So we've considered your internal control when we're designing our audit procedures, but we're not doing an audit of the internal control in order to tell you that every control that you have is operating effectively. So we're not providing any insurance on your internal control, but we did consider your systems of internal control in designing our audit procedures. We're also responsible for communicating significant matters related to the audit that are relevant to your responsibilities, but we're not required to design procedures for identifying other matters to communicate to you. We did have a separate management letter, which is that one-page letter, which I will get to after we look at the financial statements. We conducted our audit consistent with the plan, scoping, and timing that we previously communicated to you when we did our engagement letter. And our engagement team, everybody working on the audit from our firm, have complied with all relevant ethical requirements regarding independence. We are all required to be independent of your organization. Significant accounting policies, management has a responsibility to select and use appropriate accounting policies. The summary of the significant accounting policies is in the financial statement, which we'll take a look at shortly. There have been no initial selection of accounting policies and no changes in significant accounting policies during the year ended September 30th, 2017. No matters came to our attention that would require us to inform you about significant unusual transactions or the effect of accounting policies in controversial or emerging areas for which there's a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus. What that means is your accounting policies for the year ended September 30th, 2017 are consistent with prior years and they're consistent with generally accepted accounting principles. Significant accounting estimates. Estimates are an integral part of the financial statements prepared by management and are based on management's current judgments. Almost every financial statement that you'll see, regardless of the organization, will have accounting estimates within it. Certain accounting estimates may be sensitive because of their significance in the financial statement and because of the possibility that future events affecting them might differ markedly from management's current judgments. In your financial statements, the most significant accounting estimate is the allocation of expenses between program and general administrative expenses. It's based on percentages determined by management. What we do is to evaluate the key factors and assumptions used to develop the allocation and determine that it's reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. The financial statements disclosures in the body of the financial statement and notes of financial statement are neutral, consistent, and clear. If we had encountered any significant difficulties in dealing with management related to the performance of our audit, we'd be required to inform you. Actually, if we had encountered any difficulties in the performance of our audit, we would have gotten in touch with you or your executive committee well before now. We wouldn't wait till the end of the audit to let you know. So we're very pleased to let you know that we did not encounter any significant difficulties during our audit procedures. Uncorrected and corrected misstatements. Professional standards require us to accumulate all known and likely misstatements identified during the audit, other than those that we believe are trivial, and communicate them to the appropriate level of management. Further, professional standards require us to also communicate the effect of uncorrected misstatements related to prior periods on the relevant classes of transactions, account balances, or disclosures, financial statements as a whole. And any misstatements that we identified, any questions we had about numbers, have already been corrected by management. The following material misstatements we identified that were corrected, we made journal entries. This is what adjustments were required. We had to required management to record current year REMAC use fee receivables, reverse the prior year deferred revenue, and capitalize current year fixed asset purchases. Those were journal entries that weren't made prior to our audit or made with no objection during our audit. If we had any disagreements with management regarding a financial accounting, reporting, or auditing matter, we would be required to communicate that to you. We're very pleased to report we had no disagreements with management. We have requested written representation from management, which is included in management's representation letter, whereby management accepts responsibility for the financial statements and understands the disclosures and makes representations to us, and we have a signed representation letter. If we're aware that management consulted with other accountants, like shopping around to get the opinion that they wanted on the financial statement, we'd be required to communicate that to you. We're not aware of any other consultations with other accountants. And in the normal course of our association with your organization, we generally discuss a variety of matters, including accounting principles and auditing standards throughout the year. And none of those matters discussed resulted in a condition to our retention as the organization's What that means is, nobody from management called us up and said, look, we're only gonna retain you if you agree to present the financial statements in this way. So we did not have any, none of those were conditioned to our hiring. So this report's just for your use and shouldn't be used by anybody else. So that's our required communications. Now let's take a look at the financial statements, which is a lengthy package. And as I mentioned before, I know your time is short and your time is valuable here, so I'm just gonna go over some highlights. When we get to the independent auditor's report, this is the part of the financial statements that belongs to us as the auditors. The rest of the financial statements belongs to you and the organization. So what, in our opinion, this is the most important part of the audited financial statements. What we're saying here in several paragraphs, first paragraph says we've audited the financial statements as of September 30th, 2017, and 2016 is also presented there. We audited the prior year also. The next paragraph outlines management, which is you, the board, and management here, responsibility for the statements. As I mentioned before, management's responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. It also includes the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements that are free from material misstatement. And misstatement could be when either due to fraud or error. So that's management's responsibility. The next paragraphs get into our responsibility as auditors. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements based on our audits. As I mentioned before, we conducted our audits in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. And as I had mentioned before, those standards require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the statements are free from material misstatement. And our procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements depend on our judgment and risk assessment. And in assessing risk, we determine where could the financial statements be misstated, either because of errors or because of fraud, and we design our procedures accordingly. We don't examine every single transaction, but we assess the risk and determine where would a likely area of financial statement misstatement be, and concentrate on those areas. We also do samples of all the transactions. So the last sentence on this page says, we believe that the audit evidence that we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our audit opinion. Then we turn the page and we get to our audit opinion. What is the result of all of our work? In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Regional Emergency Medical Services Council of the Hudson Mohawk Valleys as of September 30th, 17 and 16, and the changes in its net assets and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So this opinion, this two-page opinion, is actually boilerplate opinion, but it is the highest opinion that you can get. It says, what did we do to do the testing, and what is the result? And the result is, in our opinion, this financial statement is fairly stated. So we turn the page to page 3, which is a statement of financial position. If this was not a not-for-profit organization, but a for-profit business, this would also be called a balance sheet. So what this shows are all your assets, and then your liabilities, and then your net assets. This actually shows that you're in very good financial position. You have assets of $802,000 compared to liabilities of just over $24,000. So you're in very good financial position. The everything's pretty comparable to the year before. Your accounts and other receivables are slightly higher than the year before. That consists of grants, REMAC user fees, receivables from the New York State courses, tuition. In the prior year, if you'll notice, I'm just pointing out things that may not be as comparative to you. You go down to the current liabilities and you see deferred revenue, which you had in the prior year, and that was the Narcan grant that you had in the prior year where you had received money and hadn't spent that yet. And that in the current year, that had been spent and was recorded as revenue. Down to the net assets, that's what remains in the organization after all liabilities had been paid. Board designated are amounts that the board has said, let's set that aside. And undesignated is the remaining amount. If we look at note 6, which is on page, sorry, page 15, it describes the board designated, which is, the board is designated, set aside the $416,000, not necessarily in a separate account, but set aside the $416,000 for future expenditures. They vote to designate the funds received from the spectrum frequency buyout for future expenditures. That's what that is. So we can turn to page 4, which is the statement of activities, the results of your operations during the year. And you have, it just breaks out your support and your revenues, grants, and registration and tuition, very comparable to the year before. And then down the program services and supporting services. So that at the end of 2017, your change in net assets, which is the excess of your support and revenues over your expenditures, increased $19,635 from the year before. And if we turn the page to page 5, it's a similar statement that was presented on the 2016 financial statements. We turn to page 6, it's a statement of functional expenses, which breaks out your expenses among your program services, breaks it out among 8 general educational services, and then your New York State Department of Health grant, and then general administrative services. And page 7 breaks out those same expenses for the prior year. And we turn to page 8, that's a statement of cash flows, saying how does that $19,000 increase in net assets relate to the change in cash? Because if we look at our cash, it actually decreased almost $4,000. That's because there are items in the statement of activities that are recorded as expenses but didn't cost you any cash. Depreciation doesn't cost you any cash. The unrealized gain or loss on investments doesn't change your cash. So you had about $15,000 increase in cash flows from your operating activities. You spent about $14,000 on some property and equipment, and increased your investments by about $5,000. So really, your net decrease in cash was about $4,000. The next several pages are the notes to financial statements. Note 1 is a summary of significant accounting policies, which, as before I had mentioned, did not change from the prior year, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. It's boilerplate, it has not changed from the prior year. The next note is note 2, which deals with your investments. It outlines what types of investments you have and what the fair value of those investments are, and the approximate market, and we turn to the next page, and note 3 shows the market value compared to the cost basis. So your market value of your investments was $324,000 at September 30th of 2017, which was a $20,000 unrealized gain over your cost basis. Now, what we need to remember is this note on investments is a snapshot as of September 30th, 2017. So there's probably been a dramatic change in that since then. It's probably increased. I don't have those numbers right now, but I just wanted to remind everybody that these financial statements are as of your year ended September 30th, 2017. We can go then, as I mentioned before, I'm going very quickly. I know you have a full agenda. I don't want you to think I'm skipping over anything, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. Accounts and other receivables, as I had mentioned on page 14, as I had mentioned before, consists of the grants, the REMAC user fees, course reimbursements, and tuition. Pretty comparable to the prior year. The next page, we get to note 5, which is your property and equipment, which really just consists of furniture and office equipment, and then a small amount of leasehold improvements that are fully depreciated. I also talked about note 6, the restrictions on net assets. Prior to this, we turn to the next page, we get into operating leases, which is just the space here and some office equipment, I think, but really this, primarily the space here, which this lease expires in 2019. Risks and uncertainties, we have to disclose that there are risks and uncertainties related to your investment securities, related to interest rates, market and credit risks. As I just mentioned before, the market value can change dramatically based on those risks. And then concentrations of credit risk is a required disclosure, just saying that your concentrations of credit risk consist principally of cash and cash equivalents in a financial institution. Your cash in the banks is insured up to the FDIC limits, and your investments with your brokerage company are insured up to the SIPC limits and the FDIC limits for cash. Those SIPC insurance amounts don't insure you against market loss, but it insures you against loss because of the program. So, commitments and contingencies, where we would be required to report any uncertain tax positions that you may have taken, that the organization may have taken, and we're not aware of any uncertain tax positions. You're reporting as a not-for-profit organization, there's no material amounts of unrecognized tax benefits. We're also required to report subsequent events. If we're aware of something that's happened within the organization or that would affect the organization after the date of September of 2017 and up to the date of the financial statements, that it would be of use to the reader of the financial statements. Say the organization discontinued a line of business or lost a major grant or something that would really change the organization that somebody reading this statement should be aware of. We'd be required to report that if we're not aware of any subsequent events that would be required to be disclosed. So that very quickly was, well, I thought it was quickly, I maybe you didn't think it was quickly, but is the financial statements. And then the last letter that we have, we would have, if we were aware of any material weaknesses in your internal control or significant deficiencies of your internal control, we would be required to issue a separate letter describing those significant deficiencies or those material weaknesses. We don't have that letter because in our review of the internal controls and in our audit procedures, we didn't come across any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. So we don't have a letter like that. What we do have here is a very brief management letter, which are just comments that don't rise to the level of a significant deficiency in internal control or a material weakness of internal control, but something that we believe should be brought to management's attention that could help the organization maybe operate more efficiently or help with the organization's accounting. Nothing that's a material weakness in internal control. So what we're saying here is this letter is not, as I just mentioned, not highlighting any matters that are significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. This letter does not affect our audit opinion on the financial statements, but they're just things that we think should be brought to management's attention. So we noted during our audit that the organization uses QuickBooks accounting software. And there are accounts receivable and accounts payable modules in the QuickBooks software that aren't really being used at this point in time efficiently or correctly. The accounts receivable and accounts payable many times are only adjusted to reflect the year-end balances. The year-end balances are correct at that, but we think you might be able to operate more efficiently if you use those accounts receivable and accounts payable modules on a month-to-month basis. Where revenues are recognized when earned and expenses are recognized when incurred. We understand that maintaining the general ledger on the accrual basis of accounting is more difficult than using the cash basis, but the accrual basis provides more meaningful financial information to management and complies with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Failure to maintain the general ledger on the accrual basis of accounting may distort the internal financial statements and might lead to critical financial decisions being made without accurate financial information. So we would suggest that the organization use the accrual basis of accounting on an interim basis and use the QuickBooks features fully for accounts receivable and accounts payable. You have those modules as part of your QuickBooks program, and it might help you operate more efficiently if you use that. And that's really the only comment that we have. We've already gone over these reports with Tim Mirabli and with Dave Kowalski, and they're well aware of our comments, and we appreciate their help when we were in here doing our audit procedures. And they anything we asked for, they had ready for us, and they made our work very efficient because they were able to answer any questions we had and provide us with any information that we asked for, and so we really appreciate that. So I'm happy to, that's our report, try to be as quick as possible. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Oh, also, the Form 990, which was actually due, the original due date was February 15th. Because a board meeting couldn't be scheduled that we could come to it, it was extended until August 15th. So it's done, and you've got it in electronic form, so all of you can review it and approve it. Extension for a 990 is not a flag for audit. It's not a problem at all. So it's not at all unusual for an organization to extend the Form 990. But that can be filed as soon as you approve it, just as these financial statements. And the same information is on the form. There's more information on the Form 990, but the numbers are the same as on these financial statements. Any questions? Or if in your leisure time you decide to review these financial statements in more depth and have some questions, discover that you do have some additional questions, you can feel free to get in touch with me or with Stephanie Mumford by email or phone call, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Tim's got our contact information. So.
Is there any reason why you would wish to meet with the Board of Directors outside the presence of management?
That's a very good question, and no, there is not.
Thank you.
No, there is not.
The only other question I had, were you able to go over with Tim and Dave the correct usage of the QuickBooks system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Do we typically make a motion to accept their report?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be happy to, if we do.
I'll
Have a motion
second
to
that.
accept. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Twice.
Right, so we'll go back up to the beginning of the agenda. So has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the prior meeting? If so, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you.
Motion. Take a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion stands.
Thank you.
All right, Tim?
I think we should see her.
Tim, Executive Director report?
Can I interject something before you start? I don't know to what degree this is, have any effect on the actual conversation that Tim will have, but the Department of State requires me to tell you that I have a license with the state of New York to sell real estate, or to act as a salesperson in real estate. Again, not that I'm gonna somehow use my superpowers to affect any conversation here, but I'm supposed to tell you that before we discuss stuff. So, wow.
So noted.
You got your Miranda warning, so look out. Okay.
I'd like to hold that for discussion.
I think we have to leave.
Okay, a little different format. You'll notice that there's some bullet points on there under Executive Director's Report, and I'll speak to those tonight. The first one on there is an update on drug shortage information. And actually, Steve asked me, requested that I contact the agencies, poll the agencies in regards to what drugs or other items, if any, would be in short supply. And yep, there's some stuff out there in short supply with most of the agencies, especially diltiazem or cardizem. Just about every agency that replied back or responded back to me is experiencing some type of shortage, whether it's an acute shortage right now or they foresee it in the near future. So cardizem is a biggie right there. Epi 1 to 10,000 is the next drug on the list. I didn't copy the whole list, but those are the two drugs that are in short supply basically throughout our region here. And the other thing is normal saline 100 cc bags. Just about everybody responded that they are in short supply of 100 cc bags of normal saline. And I'm not recommending you take a 1,000 bag and dispel 900 cc's like somebody said they were going to do, but those are the kinds of things we're working on. And that's going to segue into the second section of my report, which is the Iroquois Group Purchase Update. I met with Iroquois Director of Supply Chain Ops, Matt Galpin. Matt has undertaken the GPO initiative for us through Iroquois. Remo sent an advisory to all agencies explaining this project, any potential benefits there might be of this project. The advisory was followed up by a letter of introduction from Matt, and Matt has been actively meeting with the agencies. If you haven't been contacted from Matt, expect to be contacted. I sent a letter prior to Matt sending a letter of introduction to everybody, just giving everybody a heads up. This guy's legit. He's Remo endorsed. He's going to be contacting you to see if he can help you in any regards. I'm hoping this effort proves a bit more successful than our last GPO initiative. If you remember, that was with Mohawk Hospital Supply, based out, I believe, the Utica area. Iroquois is local. We've met with their principals. They seem to be dedicated to assisting in our efforts here, and they have provided a reliable point of contact who has made it his responsibility to personally meet with the agencies. If any of you dealt with the fellows or the 2 or 3 different people Mohawk had over the course of that initiative, they were less than reliable. It seems to me, at least what I'm hearing, is Matt is making a very good effort, hard effort to go out there, beat the pavement, and contact the agencies. And last, and I'm referencing Jim Stairs here, but office space. You know, our lease expires. We don't have to do anything tomorrow. We will renew the lease in June if we don't have anything, but we have a 6-month out built into the lease. If any time we desire to relocate, we provide a 6-month notification. We just have to find a suitable place of business in those 6 months, but I don't think that would be a big issue. We toured 2 or 3 different places, and those were buildings that were for sale. Dave's a big for sale guy, or buy guy, as opposed to lease, and he has some reasons why. One of the last meetings I mentioned I was going to send a Remsco poll to try to gauge opinions as to, do we stay here? Do we go somewhere else and lease? Do we buy a building? I want to hold off on that. I want to get together with Dave and the Finance Committee, discuss a few ideas, review finances and review options, then report back to the full Remsco as to what step, if any, we take, going down the road. So probably next week or so, I'll reach out to the committee. I'll get a hold of date and see whether we, have a conference call, if we get together around a table and discuss some options and stuff, prior to anything else. That being said, we have enlisted a commercial realtor from Weichert Realtor. We instructed her to go out there and find suitable properties. She's viewed this facility. She knows the floor plan, the facilities we need and we would like to see. And we instruct her to give us a heads up relative to any leased properties or for leased properties or for sale properties. I haven't heard back from her in about a week or so, but when she contacts me, we'll continue to search and stuff just to find out what's out there. So that in a nutshell is my report, or concludes my report, unless anybody has any questions for me. Steve?
On the drug shortage, I know that Matt from Iroquois is now talking to people individually about the GPO. Is there anything we can pursue with Iroquois that is separate from whether someone joins the GPO that addresses those 3 shortages we have now? I know we had talked about that at the meeting with them. Is there any way we can follow up and see?
I'm not sure I understand. Do you?
Well, the GPO is about doing a whole bunch of purchasing from Iroquois, right? So
Yes.
signing up with their thing and buying all their stuff, all your stuff from them, or a lot of your stuff from them.
One small part of that would be
Right, but
drugs and
so-
fluids.
So there's no opportunity for, so if I can't get those drugs and fluids, Iroquois can't find some way through the hospitals to help us get them unless we join the GPO.
I never thought of asking that to Matt. I can
Right.
ask Matt that.
Well, I think that's something maybe that we need to bring back to this body in June. Because he's going out and basically making a sales pitch to you that I can save you money on all your supplies because I can get them cheaper. And when we did this the last time, some people thought it was good because they can get them cheaper, and some people said, well, I've been using this company for years and I don't want to switch. So there's an additional thing that's being, or they have to bid them in some cases, right?
No, they were not cheaper.
Well,
My
then, or they
experience
weren't.
was that every bid I got from Mohawk, I was able to get that cheaper
Okay.
going
Or
directly
they-
to More Medical or
Right.
Boundary. His prices were not good, which is why
Okay.
I, in particular, didn't participate.
Right,
I asked him every time I put a bid out, because I
Right.
have to have 3.
Right.
But the city, you're right, it does make me go to the
Yeah.
penny, but they don't care who I get
or,
it from.
or it wasn't cheaper,
It
okay?
just wasn't.
So,
Yeah, that was my, I'm hoping that this
So,
one will be,
but-
but my
but
experience was
the
it wasn't.
thing that I think we've got to think about here is, at least everyone here should be aware, we approached them about helping us with specifically with the drug shortage. And right now, for some of us, there is no other route to get around the drug shortage. So I think we have to think about each of us individually or collectively, not only are we able to get stuff cheaper from him, but is this a route for us to get the things that are in shortage now, or that are going to be in shortage in the future because now we're getting them from a bigger supplier? And I don't know if that's something where whether the group wants to hear from him as a group, or whether we just want to have people pursue it individually, because the original sort of homework that was given to us was, how do we deal with the drug shortage? And they've put on the table this one idea, but is there something collectively we ought to be doing with it?
So I met with Matt, and with Iroquois, and so the product he's providing is basically a membership to their buying or purchasing group, but you continue to use your same suppliers. So if you're using More or Boundary or whatever company it is you're using, you continue to purchase through that company and tell them that you're associated with this Iroquois purchasing group, and you get preferred pricing. And that is as far as we've gotten. Now I met with them probably 3 weeks ago. I've done 2 orders since, and I have not found any price breaks since with Iroquois. Maybe they're working on it, but we are going to be part of a bigger consortium of purchasing power, supposedly, and so maybe those things are still in the works, but the suppliers that we will go to are no different than the ones we're
Right.
using now.
Then, based on that, guess, Tim, the question for us to ask back to Iroquois is, so here's our spreadsheet of drug shortages. How do these agencies participating help them to get these drugs? Because that's why we got into this. We didn't get into this because we wanted to start a GPO. They just offered it. And that's not a bad thing. If we all save money buying supplies through them, that's good. But I want to know specifically, or I think we should ask them specifically, how are you going to get, so if you can't get, the 100 ml bags of normal saline from More Medical, is because we're part of something bigger, do you have some other way you can get them for us? Because when I added up the numbers, we've got if if you look at the, some of the drug shortage on the spreadsheet, we've got people looking for 100 bags right now of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 agencies looking for over 100 bags of the 100 ml NaCl that they can't get, right? That's sort of why we started this thing. So,
I will go back to Matt, ask him.
I mean, if the answer is no, that's okay, but we ought to, that's why we went to them. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Steve, workforce shortage survey.
Okay. Thank you. Everyone should have at their place a one-pager called New York State EMS Council Workforce Shortage. The New York State EMS Council is beginning to look at the inability of both paid professional and volunteer professional agencies to find adequate numbers of responders to do the job, essentially. We're finding that it's not they're paid agencies that can't cover all their shifts. They're volunteer agencies that can't recruit enough volunteers to cover all their shifts. They're hybrid agencies that are struggling, that they can't get either or. And so we're starting to gather data on the workforce shortage. That is a link in that to a survey on the workforce shortage that's being distributed to every agency in the state. We're trying to get folks to fill them out. Tim is going to email this document out to everybody tomorrow, so you can copy the link right out and just go to the link. It's about a 20-question survey that basically asks your opinion or for some numbers on how you feel about your ability to recruit responders, both from EMT all the way up to paramedic, whether or not, what direction you think things are going, whether it's getting better, whether it's getting worse. All the data in this survey is blinded in the sense that you have to put your name on it so we can call you back if we have any questions about what you put in there, but none of it's being released. It's all being aggregated, so no one will see your data other than, well, I'm the person that's doing the data analysis, I'll see it. But, so I'd like to ask everybody to please fill out the survey. Also, if you've got a county meeting and there are other agencies that aren't represented here from the county, ask them to fill out the survey as well. And Tim, maybe we can send it to all agencies as well as sending it to the group. There are about 1,800 EMS agencies in New York State. If we can get 400 or 500 agencies to fill it out, we're going to have some really good data. And I mean, I can't guarantee you what it's going to say, but I think it's going to say that we're all sucking wind and trying to recruit people, and that we can use for advocacy for a whole bunch of things, whether it's for better funding for Medicare and Medicaid, or whether it's for the state to do more in recruitment and retention to help us out. So, thank you.
Any questions for Steve? Thank you, Steve. Medical director report deferred. Remand academic. Dr. McHugh?
I'm sorry.
No meeting till June, sorry.
Treasurer report, PJ?
You put enough numbers for tonight, obviously through September 30th, for our auditors, we're in good financial shape. Just quickly, September through April here, year to date, you notice the expenses are up about $73,000. 56,000 is employee related, of which we voted on the budget, and we knew about that. However, the good part is that our revenue is up about 38,000 year to date, and there's accounts receivable that's another 30,000 outstanding, which should turn into cash. So I feel like we're still going in the right direction. Good job, Tim.
Any questions for PJ? Thank you, PJ. QI? Tim, anything to report?
Is no report. QI will meet prior to the REMAC on Wednesday, June 6th.
Thank you. CON committee, Jim?
You potentially have something that would come before us, but as at this moment, it's not here or scheduled. So my hope to Tim when we interacted was that it'd wait till fall.
Lots of things coming in. No more bad ones coming in July.
Thank you. Okay, there was no DOH disciplinary actions, no course applications, and no correspondence. Finance committee, Steve?
One thing to report on from the Finance Committee, at the end of last year, we had passed a resolution allocating 12% of the annual surplus of the fiscal year that could be paid out to the staff as a incentive compensation program. We also asked Tim to develop the metrics for us, as opposed to us developing the metrics. Tim's been working on this now for a couple months with the staff. He held an all-staff meeting, and they took a slightly different pathway than we did last year. And he has presented a series of 4 key performance indicators to me in draft form. This month, I'm going to ask that they come before the Finance Committee, which is Kevin, Robert, myself, and PJ. And we will then review them, and if the Finance Committee wants to bring them forward, then we'll ask the full body to vote on them in June. And it's for the fiscal year that ends, what's the date of the end of the fiscal year?
September 30th.
September 30th, right? So we're actually ahead of the curve in that the metrics will be in place before the end of the fiscal year. It will involve, as we did last year, a survey that'll be done of the membership. I think it's a simpler survey the way Tim has designed it this year, and there are also some metrics that don't require the survey. So that'll be coming up for a hopefully approval here next month after the Finance Committee gets a chance to look at it. Thank you.
I just had a question, and this may have actually been covered, and I just don't know the answer to the question. When you guys create this, are we actually paying them from what would be gross revenue or net? Do we know?
It's 12% of net.
Okay.
And it previously was only paid out based on financial performance. So they just got 12% of net because they did a good job having more revenue than expense. Over time, we've begun adding in metrics that there's some performance measurements that show not only that we're bringing in more revenue than expense, but that we're fulfilling more of the staff is helping to lead us forward in fulfilling more of our mission and getting, so customer satisfaction with your agencies being the customers, for example. But it's still the same 12%.
State EMS Council.
Okay. The State EMS Council met last week. Quite a bit went on, so I'm just going to give a quick summary of it. First, the new state EMS director, replacing Lee Burns, is on board. His name is Ryan Greenberg, and he is out of Nassau County. He is, I'm sure you can find his bio online. He's been in EMS for 25 years. He gave a really nice introduction to the State EMS Council. He's also begun traveling around the state, meeting with folks. I know Les has met him. Tim's probably met him. I would like to suggest, Tim, that we invite him to our fall, to come to a meeting with us in the fall. He's trying to get to every single region in the state between now and the near future. Obviously, we're nearby for him, so he can get here in September, October. He did in his introduction, he talked about how he is hoping that under his tenure we can start solving some of the problems we have in EMS. And he basically asked 2 questions. And he asked people to, if you have an answer, so he asked 2 questions, and he said he's got a wall in the office, and when people give him the answers, he's putting them up on the wall, and the staff meets every couple of weeks, he's gonna meet every couple of weeks and look at the answers, and so it's sort of his informal way of doing, I guess, a listening tour. Question number 1 is, if you had one wish that's of something you can change in EMS, what would it be? And question number 2 is, what would it take to keep you at EMS for 10 more years? So if anybody here is interested in sending him your suggestions on those 2 answers, he really would want to hear from you. I mean, his email address is his first name dot last name at, it's at DOH. It's the same as any other. He seems to be pretty friendly. He's developed a good working relationship pretty quickly. The next thing is that we're a series of protocol changes to the collaborative protocol approved that change the AEMT level protocols. So if any of your agencies use AEMTs, the chest trauma, asthmatic acute, chest pain, pulmonary edema, and anaphylaxis protocols have been changed to basically upgrade what the AEMT can do to their level of training. So Those are out there if you want to use them. The new BLS protocols are now out for comment, and they expect final approval in September, and they will be implemented on January 1, 2019. We're going to have a whole new set of BLS protocols. A lot of work's been going on all over the state. It'll be the statewide BLS protocol. It's going to be married up with our collaborative protocol. Our collaborative protocol, it's not really ours anymore, but the collaborative protocol that began here is now being used all of upstate. It's not being used in New York City, it's not being used in Nassau, Suffolk, but it's geographically almost all of New York State protocol. So the committee of physicians and paramedics and others have been meeting for quite some time, and I think they're all pretty excited about what they're coming up with in the BLS protocol. The state is going to be putting out a recruitment toolkit online for recruitment and retention, and it should be out in the next couple weeks. They've been and it's designed to help agencies give you some tools you can use. They've already started putting some things out there on their Facebook page you can find, and their YouTube channel. They've done some public service announcements, which are basically 25-second snippets of why I got into EMS and interviewing EMS providers. They're trying to develop a toolkit that agencies can use, so that'll be coming our way. There was a lot of discussion of work on the new ambulance construction standards, and I think the biggest focus right now is going to be if we can do something to get them. Our state right now hasn't endorsed any standards, even though there's a national set of ambulance construction standards coming together, and whether the state is going to endorse a set of standards. The other thing that is sort of tangential to that is a really big discussion about provider safety. Nobody really knows what to do about this yet, but it's very clear that provider fatigue is a huge issue, and fitness for duty because of fatigue is a huge issue. And there's a committee, a safety committee of the State EMS Council that is going to be looking at should there be some standards, some best practices, or even some rules that govern fatigue and fitness for duty. And everybody knows that's a double-edged sword because so many providers are forced to work more than one job because there's such a shortage of people, and also because of what it takes to make a living. So that's out there. The Bureau of EMS announced there's going to be a pilot of electronic testing. So being able to take an EMT or paramedic exam online. I think that's a long time in coming. It's just going to be a pilot. They'll test it out. I don't know what region it's going to be or when, but it is going to be done. The change of the EMT age from 18 to 17 regulation will be published shortly. The comment period is ended, and they're still answering some of the comments, but as soon as that's done, the reg will come out, and that'll officially change the age of EMT, that you can take your EMT exam in New York State to 17. The state's moving towards NEMSIS 3 over the summer, so for those of you that are really into the data side of things, the new NEMSIS 3 is going to be there. And the last thing I'll mention, well, two last things. Number one, there is going to be a deputy director of the Bureau of EMS. That's not a position that was ever there before, and that person has not yet been hired, but the interviews are going on now, so they're adding a little bit more horsepower to the Bureau of EMS. And the last thing is that the new director has got a very strong interest in trying to make EPCRs go statewide. Right now, 50% of the agencies in the state use EPCRs, and 50% are still on paper. But if you take a look at the size of the agencies, 75% of the PCRs, the actual number of PCRs, are being done electronically. The state wants to look at ways to get the rural and small agencies on an electronic platform, and that may be, for example, that the state picks a vendor that they can work with and offers a low-cost alternative to people. Not that everyone has to use it, but if you're not on EPCRs and we can give you this one that doesn't cost you any money, will you use it, kind of thing. So for agencies that are still on paper, that's an opportunity out there. And the real reason they want to do it is because they want to be able to look at the data, and the stuff that's on paper, that data is generally lost to us. So I know it sounds like there's a relatively ambitious agenda for the new director, but that's what he shared with us. Thanks.
All right, So the nurses, committee, we are going to meet the first week in June, we're just trying to select a specific date. I sent out an email to the committee and, just gonna narrow that down to a date, so I'll report on the next, at next month. MCI committee, do you think?
No report.
Nominating, Maria?
Report tonight.
Let's see, any other? Oh, patient safety handle, Brian reported that only 4 agencies have expressed any type of interest so far. Northern Duchess, Albany County Sheriff, North Greenbush, and Valatia. Does anybody have anything to add to that? No. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Chris Craigmeyer, who is the regional rep, he met at Saratoga with us, because we just purchased another piece of the equipment from Hovermat, and he did say that he had been reached out, it must have been Brian, I think, who probably reached out to him, but he did say that if we did move forward with that, he would be more than willing to give us like a price cut or some type of a break on the equipment, or work with us to do that. So if I'll wait and I'll kind of connect with Brian. At first I didn't know he was going to be here, wasn't going to be here till tonight, so I'll reach out to him and see where he's at, and then maybe we can move forward on that before our next meeting. Has anybody worked with Brian or had any other information maybe about what he's done so far or anything? No? Okay. All right, I will reach out to him. Any other reports? No? County reports, Columbia, PJ?
No report, there was no meeting.
And Aiden is excused as well. I'm sorry I didn't mention the excused people, so it's, Aiden was added to the group of Dr. Daly, Brian Wood, Skip Biebernitz.
Skip's here.
Oh.
Kevin?
Skip's here.
Oh, sorry. Okay, who's on the list?
My
I
bad.
apologize, I didn't see him. Okay.
You're back.
Okay, you're back, good. Okay. Rensselaer County, Amy?
Amy had to leave, she said there's no report.
Kevin Robert is excused. Schenectady, Jim Bina?
There's no report, we're supposed to meet tonight, but we canceled it for this meeting.
What was that? I'm sorry?
Green County.
Green County.
Green
Is that you?
County, I'd like to remind people we have our EMS recognition night this coming Saturday, the 26th at 6:30 at the Wyndham Country Club.
Thank you. All right. Sorry. Can I go back to Scott? I apologize, Scott. Issue discussions, potential of Remo to host the EMS management and leadership training program?
There's a
Sorry.
piece of paper in front of you from the National EMS Management Association. It's an outline of their field training and evaluation program. I know that they are offering this, basically training management, how to use a good field training program. They're offering that at Vital Signs as a either 1 or 2 day pre-con. I think a 1 day pre-con. I think that this type of training is something really that Remo should be offering on a regular basis, whether it's training management, how to train their own people, or training management, how to manage an EMS agency, what have you. I think all of us around the table here know that managing EMS has become much more challenging, much more specific than just managing any other type of business. And I think that one of the things that Remo should be doing with its whatever $800,000 worth of assets that are stashed away is offering these types of leadership training to our region. This is one that they travel, the National EMS Management Association travels and delivers this like they're doing at Vital Signs. I think if I remember correctly, I didn't print out the information sheet about how they deliver it, but I think they can handle up to 30 or 36 people in a class. The cost for travel, et cetera, to deliver the program is about $12,000. My thought was that we could partially subsidize it and still charge some money for agencies to send their folks to, but that Remo could subsidize part of that. So I'm not looking to do anything with it tonight necessarily, but if you guys would take a few minutes, look at NEMSMA's, N-E-S-M-A, apostrophe, NEMSMA's website, look at this program and look at the stuff that they offer. It's just something I think that we should talk about. I think just in general, aside from this particular one, there's a lot of, and Tim and I have had this conversation several times, but there are a lot of good quality leadership and EMS management training opportunities out there that we could be bringing here. It may require some subsidizing, either in part or in whole, by this body. I've had many conversations with a lot of people that are sitting around this table, and I think there's a concern from some that we kind of wonder why we come here. And I'll say it publicly that I'm one of those people. Sometimes I feel like we come here and just kind of spin our wheels on the same things over and over again. I think that one of the things that we need to be doing as an organization is teaching our EMS folks that are out there how to be managers in this day and age in EMS. And so we talk about things like staffing shortages and other types of issues, and this is just another one of them. I think that there's a lot of folks out there that are managing EMS agencies that could use a lot of help. I know I'm one of them. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's just something in general that I think we ought to be doing a better job at as a council and as a program agency. So that was where I was starting with, was with this one. If you guys could just take some time, look over their website, maybe come up with some other ideas about what we might be able to offer down the road. I know Tim is open to working with whomever to bring whomever here. He and I have had a lot of conversations about this stuff.
Scott, is this like this is like a train the trainer?
Yeah.
So you're gonna bring in supervisors from agencies that are responsible for the onboarding of new
Correct.
EMS personnel, and they're gonna learn a systematic way of changing their agency's policies to do onboarding.
Correct, yeah, how to properly train their people so that, and I think, again, most of the people in this room are I'm probably preaching to the choir to a certain extent, but most of the people in this room will agree that retaining our people once we get them there is another challenge. One of the things that we have found at Valatia is we have implemented part of this to a kind of a smaller scale, because their scale, as you can see in step 2 under core concepts, is pretty lengthy. We've implemented this on a little bit smaller scale, and it's been successful. It's a very lengthy field training process, but it's been very successful at keeping them once they're done with it. They feel like they've gotten the proper training to be a part of the organization. They feel more buy-in, I think. So yeah, I guess a train the trainer is kind of the way to do it. It's basically teaching management how to implement this type of program in their agency.
I think this is great that you bring it here, Scott. I can think of 2 things to do to help moving forward. Number 1 is, like you said, we're preaching to the choir here, and there are maybe a lot of agencies that wouldn't know about it. Maybe if there was a way for you to do like a Survey Monkey with a couple questions that we could send to all the agencies. If you were offered, and then sort of break it down in simple, if you were offered a training program that you could come in and it would cost less than X and do Y, Z, would you come? Because I think the hardest thing for us is going to be, if we decide to offer it, is going to be selling it to people. Because the people in here that tend to be leaders, who probably may be the ones that need it the least, will be the ones that send people to it. But we've got to connect back with all the people back in the agencies that don't get involved with Remo that may need it the most, because for it to be successful, you want to get them drawn in too.
Yeah, maybe that's an important role, I think, of the county representatives that are here, to take it back to their individual counties try to push it out to their agencies and encourage them to do that. Cool. So I'll work with Tim on a survey thing, and, you know, if you guys have other ideas, by all means, bring it forward, but I mean, I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of opportunities out there for EMS management specific, management training programs that are EMS specific. And I think we all know that EMS is a kind of a different creature.
Can I just ask out of curiosity, how many folks here are members of the National EMS Management Association? So I didn't even know there was a National EMS Management Association until about a month and a half ago. And they've got a website with a lot of stuff on it. And, you know, Scott said at the beginning, you know, one of the strengths one of the things we have is we don't have the biggest strength in training managers. I would, you know, encourage people to look at their website, see if there are other things that they offer that might be interesting for us. I mean, I'm surprised that, you know, from all the leaders of this region, only 2 of them even have any interaction.
They have a few levels of training too for, and I may mess up the names, but like supervising paramedic, managing paramedic or officer or whatever, and then an executive. I think there are 3 different levels. And the credentialing, even of the lowest level, which would be like a supervisor, field supervisor type person, is quite strenuous. It's a lot of work just to get credentialed in that. So the training is pretty good. I went to one of their pre-conference sessions on you know, how to get through their executive training program, and it's pretty in-depth. I was pretty impressed by their program.
I think this goes along with Tim's business plan. In your business plan, I think you explained or put out a thought that you'd like to have an EMS leadership program or a forum, and I think that falls right in line with that.
Yeah, and the reality is that the first time out, we might put something out that ends up costing us more money than what we wanted because we don't get full attendance. Mm-hmm. But the more things we put out, the more things that we offer here, I think the better attended they'll be once people start to realize that it's good quality, you know, national level stuff. It's not just, you know, me and Tim and somebody else from around the table standing up in front of people telling them how we manage, because that's, I think, kind of pointless, to be honest with you.
And I think your idea of we partially subsidize it is a good idea, so it doesn't cost agencies that much to come. The agencies that probably need it the most are the agencies probably that can put up the less money, we have less money, right?
What would the cost be for an agency? Do you have an idea?
Well, I think to bring that, for this particular program, they say the estimate is about $12,000. So, I think it was either 30 or 36 people that they can handle in a class. I can't remember the exact numbers, I worked it out, but it was like if we charged about $150 a person to come, then Remo would end up subsidizing about half the money. I don't remember the exact numbers now. I worked it out by. Say it again?
333. So maybe like 150 would be about half.
Yeah. So it's not, you know, it's not a tremendous outlay. But again, the first time out, if we don't get a full class, we may end up subsidizing 3/4 of it. But again, I think the more things that we offer of that caliber, I think the better attended they'll be in the future.
Who would qualify? Would it be people who are already in a management role or supervisory role? Or
I guess that'd be up to the agency if they're gonna send somebody. I mean, maybe if the agency's gonna send somebody, I would guess it would be up to them if it's an aspiring supervisor or a current supervisor or, you know, more executive level, whatever.
I just didn't know what level they'd be, you know, offering the training. Would it be more at that manager, executive level, or is it more on the supervisory?
Yeah, I would assume so, but again, I guess that would differ for every agency. You know, the management structure, for example, at Mohawk is considerably larger with more tiers probably than the management structure at Ravenna Rescue. Not to pick on them necessarily, but I'm just trying to think of a small agency that probably has one person running the whole show. So, you know, I guess, up
Just
to
on
date.
our side, besides everything else, there's actually a National Ambulance Association, American Ambulance Association is run Leadership Academy.
There's more stuff,
And they have a actually accredited program for ambulance service manager.
yeah. Yeah, the ambulance, or the ASM certification. So, I mean, and actually there's mention of that on NEMSMA's website as well. Like they recognize that training towards becoming an executive, a fellow, whatever they call it. So, yeah, there's several organizations out there that are providing some really good stuff, and it's not difficult to bring them here.
So you're doing the search on the web, search out the American Ambulance Association website, there's information there about the ASM program. Maybe they can link that together with that and
Is the American Ambulance Association open to all types of
you can
ambulance
review the
services? or-
website and there's information there about the membership criteria.
Okay. Is
I
it
know-
just?
I know it's not similar to the state association,
Thank you.
okay?
Yep.
Any other questions for Scott, or?
So maybe we can leave this on the agenda for next month and talk about it a little more in depth, some more details.
All right. So ratification of the executive committee approval under new business of the regional EMS award nominations. Brian isn't here, but Steve said he could speak to that.
Yeah, Brian and the committee finished the awards, and they were due to the state at the 1st of May. Because we didn't have a meeting last month, the body could not officially ratify those awards, but they were handed out for the meeting materials, and so Tim and Anne Marie and I, realizing that if we did not have the executive committee approve them, then we could not submit them to the state, and none of our winners would be eligible for the statewide awards. So the executive committee held an email vote to approve the applications and move it forward. But the way the bylaws read, that it needs to come back here for approval by the Remsco. So I think Tim sent out the award winners to everybody, so you should all have seen who we are, and we just need a motion, and I would make the motion that the Remsco approve the executive committee submissions to.
Should be on the website, should be on Facebook, should be on both.
On what website?
Remo?
You sent it out to us, or you just?
No, they're posted on the website and Facebook.
Tim can go print them out and hand them out right now, if you wanna do that, that's just fine.
Well, why don't you just, I was gonna say, it only take a second, why don't you just read them?
Let's read them.
I have to get the list.
If they're already posted, why are we voting on it?
Well, as he said, it's a matter of record, we have
Matter
to
of record.
affirm the vote.
I mean, ideally, didn't wanna have to do it at the executive committee level, but they wouldn't be able to advance to the state if we didn't get them there by May 1, because it's not their problem, we didn't have a quorum last month.
You can't communicate business on Facebook and your website. You need to send the information to people so that you know it's there to look for it.
I will let the chairman of the committee know that. I was under the impression that everybody
So would you
here
like me to read
had received the list.
the names that were already notified? The BLS Provider of the Year was Jerry Cross from Helderberg Ambulance. The ALS Provider of the Year, apparently there was a tie in the outside voting of Chuck Gillia from Albany County Sheriff's Office.
Where'd you get the list?
EMS, what's that?
Pulling it up.
On the website. There's right there. And Alex Leszpinski, if I said that right, I hope, from Clifton Park Half Moon. The EMS Educator of Excellence was Russ Coonrat from the Clifton Park Half Moon. The Harriet C. Weber EMS Leadership Award was none other than Steve Kroll from Delmar Bethlehem EMS. The Agency of the Year was Colony EMS. The RN of Excellence was Tom Bolaris from Ellis Hospital. The MD of Excellence was Steve Verdini from Ellis Hospital. And the EMS Communicator was Steve Roberts from Albany County Sheriff's EMS. My understanding, I mean, Tim, you probably know more about this, but my understanding was that they took the awards, that the committee took the list of nominations and gave it to a group of people from outside of the region and asked them to review the nominations and vote on them in some way, and the highest scoring ones were the ones that were.
It was a combination. Brian got 3 reviewers from other regions who read the applications, they ranked them, and then they submitted those rankings back to the committee, so the committee had some outside input when they made their final choices.
I'll make the motion to accept them.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Can I just ask, I know we kinda had a discussion out of order there a little bit, but can I ask just one question real quick? Tim, what was the outcome of the junior, or whatever is the word? So we had
an agency submit, it never made it to Remo. They nominated a junior provider. I forgot what the exact category is. But it never made it to Remo. My suggestion to Scott was to submit that person anyways. Remo would be happy to purchase a plaque for this junior provider and recognize them at the EMS Awards banquet, knowing that that nomination would never have made it to the state, but this person was deserving. We'd have no problem purchasing a plaque, inviting them to the banquet, and recognizing them there.
So the issue was that the person that submitted it, got an email for Remo somewhere, like off of the website or something, and it never made it to where it was supposed to be. So I got a phone call saying why there was no junior person in the awards list, and we nominated a person, so why didn't she get that award? So I contacted Tim, and he said he never received it, so I kind of backtracked and found out they sent it to what basically is a dead email. They didn't, I guess follow the directions that were on the release. So that was my suggestion to Tim as well, that the person should still get recognized by Remo, knowing that it was late to send it to the state, so.
And I still haven't received it, Scott.
I forwarded it to you.
You did?
I forwarded it.
Okay.
Because they sent it to me, and then I forwarded it on.
Brian Wood also told, I'm not on the committee, so I'm not familiar with the specific circumstance, but Brian told me that the committee looked at the applications for EMS award in quality and safety and chose not to award that this year because they did not feel any of the applications that were made fit the criteria for the award, so they chose not to award it.
Just as a comment, I would say kudos to the committee for actually reaching outside the region and have somebody independently review that, because I think it takes, nepotism or whatever favoritism out of the process, so I think that's a real good practice. And especially, it's a great practice if you can get it done in the time constraint that we typically are under.
Can I ask a question? How many, and I don't want to break it down into it, but did we have 10 applicants? Did we have 50 recommendations? What did?
Total nominations? I'd have to go count them, Jeff, but I'm
Oh,
guessing it wasn't bad. It was probably 20-ish,
So
maybe
it's
for
covered
all.
the?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, we had 3 or 4 categories that had, more than 3 nominations. So there were some categories that had a bunch, and then I think there were some that only had 1 or 2, like the Quality Award had 2, and they looked at them and they said, we don't want to pick between these 2 because we don't think either one of them rises to the level. But the big categories like EMT of the Year, Paramedic of the Year, Agents of the Year had more nominations than the smaller ones like this Communications Professional of the Year or Physician of the Year. I bet, Tim, you could give the numbers to us at June?
Yeah, I
Just the number
get
of-
them. I can count them in there.
Ballpark, right? It doesn't have to be-
It was actually pretty good. We got the word out there, and a lot of people did submit. Everything came in as usual the last week or so. We got flooded with them, but all told, there were in excess, I would say, of 25 or more apps throughout all the categories.
So you have a motion, you gotta vote. You gotta vote.
The motion,
No,
So
we did it,
motion
so it's
and
just
second.
all in favor.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion stands. I'd like to just bring up, under new business, the retreat, again. I know we've talked about this, so could be new business, could be old business, but we've not really done anything with it. I think we knew that, and as Scott just said, you know, we've spinned our wheels on a lot of things, spun our wheels on a lot of things, and I'd like to at least somewhere maybe pull together a group where if people would be willing, a few people or 6 or 7 of us try to maybe move this forward, and I think we're gonna need a few people to do this instead of just one to be able to go over the content of what Dave had, you know, had given us at the time. And so those who might have attended that retreat, if we could, I don't really even know where else to begin, but to maybe start there. But I would love to have us be able to maybe meet before the next meeting. I'd certainly be willing to pull it together and see if there would be anybody else who would be willing to sit on that subgroup or whatever we wanted to say. Is there anybody here interested? I will certainly be happy to look at dates of what people might want to be able, or be willing and able to attend, and we can at least maybe try to discuss. I have some notes. I know other people said that they had taken notes from Dave, and we had some literature that he had given us, and I would just like to, you know, we invested in that, you know, and he did a real nice job, and we just haven't really moved forward with that. So anyone here interested in being part of that? EJ? Steve? Scott? Carol?
Yeah.
Jeff? Anyone else interested? We can make it Sunday, Maria? All right, great. I will set something up. I'll send out an email, and then we can maybe see if we can come up with it within any time of the day would be fine. I can certainly put that out there and see what we can do, and bring our notes and go from there. All right.
Just as a note, I don't think you could say you really didn't accomplish anything. Realistically, you now have one meeting out here. It's much more inclusive of the thoughts and the ideas of the people that attend. So I think you've accomplished something greatly simply by doing that very thing. Kudos to that.
I also,
Forward.
Jim, to go along with that, I also think that we're almost done with the bylaws. That was a huge undertaking, but it's almost done. And that the business plan that Tim designed was to move forward with some of the things in the retreat. So I think when we go sit down with that retreat report, and if we sit down and we put the business plan next to it, I think you're gonna see that there's a lot of, we can take, I don't wanna say take credit, but I think we have done more than, even though we haven't looked at it as in implementing the retreat, I think you'll see we've done some really good stuff. And I think Tim should be we should ask Tim to be part of the group as well, for sure.
Good. Very good. All right. Are there any other items from the floor?
Just something that's kind of new. My state association, United New York Ambulance Network, is working closely with the Home Care Association on a sepsis training seminar for EMS providers. There's an EMS, a sepsis advisory panel has been put together by Home Care, the Department of Aging, and other folks like that. And we're working now with the Bureau of EMS and Trauma, develop a set of EMS slides and lectures. So it would be a short presentation that we can actually encompass the EMS side in with the home care side, in with the hospital group. Because everybody knows that last year the governor signed into law a sepsis rule that hospitals have to be part of. EMS needs to be part of that as well.
And for the hospital side, it's a big paper performance measure too that we are all
And so far we did
accountable
several across the state training for the home care group involving EMS providers. So hopefully have something at Vital Signs or next year to roll out.
What are they doing for the EMS as far as like criteria? What are they
So right now we're working with Amy Johnson, the Bureau of EMS and Trauma, to develop the EMS presentation. So we have some other folks that have some EMS slides and a presentation that may be incorporating with this presentation.
So there's certain measures that you guys have to.
Yes, there's a whole line of things on the sepsis committee. It's called the Rory Stanton Foundation. It's also part of the committee. He lost his son, I think 11 years old, for a simple wound on his elbow. They died, 7 days later of sepsis. So stay tuned. If you have any information on sepsis you want to see included, please, let me know.
If I can help at all, I'm on a couple committees at the hospital
I'll
for
scan it.
sepsis, so, we look
Right now, we're
forward to
gathering
that.
information like
1 hour bundle and 3 hour.
the Executive Vice President for the Home Care Association is working on a slide presentation that Andy Johnson, Bob Fidello, and myself will be working on.
Certainly feel free to reach out if you have any other items from the floor?
Just two things. Reminder, Wednesday, EMS Memorial at the Plaza. And another thing, Anne Marie, you have in your paperwork there. This time every year, Bureau of EMS sends out to the program agencies course sponsorship renewal forms for course sponsors that need to renew. Anne Marie has one up there for Western Turnpike Rescue Squad. Part of our duty is to endorse that. She needs to sign that, and I need to submit that to DOH so they can complete their renewal process. I would just ask that that be read into the record tonight.
They signed it, so, okay, good.
And then you'll need to sign that, and I'll submit it.
Yep, I
So you
did
need a
sign it.
motion and a second?
I think I need a motion and a second to approve
I'll
that.
make a motion that we approve it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion stands. All right, if there are no more items from the floor, I make a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
Motion to cancel the